If you're a Shopify developer and you want to start freelancing, you need to watch this video. So the hard truth is that freelancing is not just about writing code. It's more about thinking like a business person. And to be honest, most of us were never taught how, myself included. Which is why I brought on award-winning Shopify developer, Taylor Page. Taylor is going to teach us all about how to better manage client relationships and how to position yourself as an expert so you can make more money with freelancing. If that sounds good to you, let's get into it. Okay guys, this is Patrick from Code That Converts today. I have a special guest on screen for you right here, the legend himself, Taylor Page. I know some of you guys watching have seen him before, maybe inside of Free Mode, or maybe just part of Liquid Weekly, or you've seen his posts on LinkedIn. Either way, I'm really happy I got him on today for you guys.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course, bro. Like, honestly, I'm happy to have this conversation myself. You know, because I think I'm going to learn a lot today. Everybody else just has the benefit of watching it, I guess. It's really for me.
Right. Yeah, that's where it's I mean, Liquid Weekly podcast is the same way. I'm like, oh, okay, this is for everybody else, but it's really just because I have questions or things that I need to get figured out here. So really totally understand that.
Right. And what actually inspired this conversation? So I had this little inner circle WhatsApp group with some Shopify developers that I know personally, because I used to run a Shopify developer community on school. I had to close that down because I was getting a ton of spam. But the people that were the most active, I kept them in a WhatsApp group. And we just talk about different things. And I had one of them in there. He's been getting some client work. But it's just like, imagine you just start getting work and now you're just like, how do I know I'm doing this properly?
Right.
Right. And clients have a lot of expectations too.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that he was struggling with is figuring out like when it makes sense to use an app versus when you're just building something custom. So I'll give you an example. So he was working on a Shopify store that sells like liquor, right? Like alcoholic products. And they had a custom Figma design that they had a designer make up for them. You know how designers are, they just put stuff on the screen and expect us to do it.
Yes.
So he was trying to figure out whether it made more sense to do the different sections custom or if he should use an app like Design Packs or something to kind of bridge the gap. And then how he should actually communicate that to clients so that they understand it actually makes more sense to use an app in certain situations versus just spending more time doing it custom.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a tough thing figuring that out because there's so many different scenarios where like one makes more sense than the other. And so I love recommending design packs to people and Trudy put together a great app. So at least, you can't go wrong there as far as recommending an app like that, right? But when I talk to clients as far as, when we have some kind of specific spec that we are building something out, whether it's a function, feature, or a bit of functionality or a feature or something like this, or something design specific, design heavy, usually I lean towards kind of education first and letting the client take the lead. So I'll give them information as far as like, hey, this will help cut down our development time, but it's going to be a smaller ongoing cost in order to support this, or this will be a bigger upfront cost for development. So a lot of this really depends on, the client's priorities when it comes to your timeline and then also their budget, right? So custom often means, maybe a little bit more time and more budget, but often it's one-time development if it's something that's just built into the theme. And so, that's a consideration there as opposed to an app you're taking on. It's probably going to be able to shorten up that timeline because an app developer has kind of built out that functionality or kind of helped out with that design ahead of time. And so you can get there quicker at a smaller upfront cost, but then you have an ongoing cost associated with that. So as far as like how I typically make that decision, a lot of times I put that back on the client. It's like, hey, excuse me, here's the pros and cons of each method, and we can kind of go from there as far as what that looks like. Now there are some things too. You're just gonna have to tell them we need an app for this, right? Like so, discounts are a great example. Although you can do quite a bit, you get away with a lot with Shopify functions these days. But I personally don't like messing with discounts, so I'm always like, An app is the best way to deal with this kind of type thing. The storefront stuff, a lot of times I will often build that out when I can, just because that's more the niche that I'm in or how I position myself as a developer, right? And so it's like, hey, we can do this for sure. And a lot of times, clients don't want apps. They like the idea of that upfront investment. If you have that relationship, they're going to trust you as far as like handing off that implementation to you. But either way, I think the best thing that you can do often is kind of present those as options and then really help the client decide based on what's important to them.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. But I guess an added caveat to that situation is imagine you're like
Okay.
in the middle of a project and then during it you're like, oh, I know I said this initially, but app makes a lot more sense in the situation. But the client already has it in their head that we're not using any apps, right? How do you
Yeah.
navigate that?
So this is the incredibly bit of wisdom that I've learned over the years that it always hits people, right? It's just you just have to communicate through it. Like that's it's one of those things. It's always like the simplest solution is often the answer, but we often shy away from like making it look like sorry we were wrong, right? Or I wasn't the expert in this scenario. We picked the wrong path or whatever. You
Mhm.
just communicate, hey, as we've delved into this further, a lot of times what happens is, the project expands. So sometimes in freelancing we call this scope creep. A lot of other times it's just that the further that we've gotten into this, we've found new things that are important to you. So a really great example for this, building something like quick shop features into a theme, not really hard for someone doing theme dev, right? Just being able to quickly add stuff to the cart from like a collection view or something like this if it's not native to the theme. But now all of a sudden the client wants analytics associated with this after we've done some kind of like initial MVP work, right? Well, now theme dev doesn't make sense because you have to spin up a whole analytics engine to support like how people are using it if they're not comfortable. There's some stuff that you could do like I've done where we're tagging those orders with flow and stuff after the fact so they can at least pull those up and we can run reports. But if they want something more robust, like we're going to need an app. So a lot of times it is more just about like, hey, after we've communicated, after we've worked on this a little bit, it turns out based on how you're wanting to use this, we really should, fold in an app, and because it will be the best solution long term for you. So, that's always the tough part is I think we don't want to look like we don't know what we're talking about or having to backtrack something, but communicating through that, in a way that's just honest, people are always very understanding of that situation.
Okay, but it sounds like I guess you have enough experience at this point. You know from jump if you need an app or not for you to do something, right?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I make mistakes still all the time, even with the experience or working with clients for years. Like I said, because it just happens. You're in a project and you think it's really simple, and it's like, hey, like we can do this, or oh man, maybe we're going to be really fancy. We're going to incorporate Shopify Flow for some automation features to make this really simple for you, or whatever. So we don't need another app. And then you get halfway into it and you realize, oh no, like this specific feature that they want, we do actually need an app for this. And so coming back to the client and be like, hey, like after we got into it and we were able to like actually explore this part of it, turns out like we're not able to get this all the way in the way that you want to use it custom. This isn't the app that I'd recommend us use. Here's why. Again, just like communicating through that, people are understanding about that stuff when it happens.
Okay, so it's just a matter of how you frame everything and how you communicate it with the client.
Yeah. I think it's more of those things. Like I said, you definitely want to just come from a position. Personally, I would always recommend like honesty over everything else, right? It's not like everybody's worked to some degree with not great app implementations or whatever kind of type thing where they're just like, oh, this is a Shopify problem. And you're the developer who's on the email and you're like, this is not a Shopify problem, man. This is a your app issue, okay? And so I actually working with one client right now that was like they're moving off this app because they've gotten this from the support multiple times. Like, oh, this is a Shopify issue. It's like no, it's actually not, and they
Bro,
know that. They don't even need the developer to hear it.
it's so funny because I've been in this situation before where you reach out to the
Mhm.
app, oh, it's a Shopify problem. Reach out to Shopify, no, go to app customer support. And it's just like, okay, now I got to hold
Yep.
this. What do I do?
Right. And so, do it in a way when you communicate that's honest, right? Like it's not like this isn't a Shopify problem. we got this far and we've kind of hit the boundary of what we can do for this. And we've found that now after we've gotten to this point, and this is just a better solution. So this is the way we need to go. People are, when you're a freelancer, contractor, fractional developer, whatever you want to call it, people are paying you to deliver on solutions, right? And
Mhm.
so sometimes solutions start off one way and then they develop and you find that's not actually the best way to do it and you have to backtrack a little bit.
Right.
That's
I
what they're
feel
paying you for, that expertise.
it happens
And
so much too. So much.
yeah, yeah.
I actually wanted to ask you a kind of an adjacent question to that as well. So
Okay.
imagine starting a new client project, you give them an estimate and you charge them based on the estimate. Let's say you say it's going to take a month, right? And of
Mhm.
course, you find a problem you didn't see or you couldn't have seen when you started the project. And now
Right.
it's going to creep outside of the original timeline that you gave.
Mhm.
But how do you communicate that to the client in a way where they're not like upset that now it's going to take longer than you initially said?
Yeah. So when something like that happens, it really depends on how so every project you do should have some kind of a scope of work, contract set of terms that basically dictates what you're providing, the timeline that you're providing it, and the budget that you're providing it for, right? And so as you get into a project, and especially if it's something that you couldn't have seen before, potentially the client hasn't provided that information because they didn't know it was important. We always want to stay positive in the sense of like this wasn't intentionally excluded, right? To like get a lower price point or whatever. It's like one of those things, like always stay positive from the frame set that you're coming from here, and just assume, hey, this was just missed, right? Initial discovery, whatever you want to call this. And so as far as communicating that, what I've done in the past is figured out one, like, was this on me or was it on the client? Like, was this something that I missed that I should have covered? And if it was something that I missed that I should have covered, I'm going to put in the extra time and communicate, hey, this is going to take a little bit longer because I missed this. I'm going to own that. Like that's my recommendation. Always, whenever possible, is be honest. People respect honesty and transparency, and that's happened time and again where I've found that that's been effective, especially when you're building long-term relationships with clients, and that's what you want. And so I've communicated, I missed this. I'm really sorry. Because of that, like our project's going to end up taking a little bit longer. I'm going to need this extra time to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm just going to cover the costs. Like that's usually what happens. If the mistake is on me, historically, what I've done is I've just eaten the cost on that because that to me is I refer to it as taking a $2,000 bath because that's basically what it's been in some instances where I've missed a big set of things that were part of a project. Now, when it's something that I don't feel like was on me, like you mentioned, like sometimes there's just things that you could not have seen. We're going to assume that it's something that the client did not know was really important aspect of this or what have you, and it's going to effectively maybe double like the timeline on the project. As soon as I discover that, I'm going to reach out and ask questions about how important X, Y, and Z is. Right. So like, is our deliverable really this hard set? Like from a timeline perspective, in regards to the budget, like after getting into this a little bit, I have found this conflict or this kind of an issue or whatever. Like we're going to have to completely migrate from this app to another app if we want to do X, Y, and Z or what have you, because it just doesn't have this functionality. And when that happens, it's like more so a conversation of now that I'm into it, I found this. I found we're going to need this, which means I'm going to need an extra month, extra whatever. And it's going to be this much more unless we adjust the deliverable down. So we can still keep it in the budget and the timeline, but maybe the deliverable changes, right? So whatever your end product ends up being, kind of type thing. And so that you kind of like re-enter into a little bit of negotiation again, as far as like trying to figure out like what's going to work best for them. But again, yeah, it's more about that communication of coming from a place of positivity of like, and you being the expert, right? Like, I didn't catch this before. I couldn't have seen this before. Now that we're into it, we're able to actually effectively see some of this. This is now what this looks like. And so in some instances, it's, hey, this isn't going to work for us. Like, we're going to go ahead and part ways. More times than not, though, they're like, okay, totally understood. Like, you're green lighted for that. Just go ahead and get it done. So again, like I think if you're honest and transparent whenever you can be and you communicate through that, a lot of us like avoid what we perceive as conflict or disappointing client because of that. Like, maybe we just don't say anything, we just do the work or whatever. or we just, ghost them on a project. And I think that's the absolute worst thing that you could do is
Right.
ghosting a client.
Right.
And so, that's always my recommendation is just communicate, often and early. And that's the part that people don't always love about freelancing with like the code, not necessarily the people stuff. But it's the things again, like if you're focused on, creating like long lasting client relationships, people really respect that.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously, the timeline is going to change depending on the new scope of the project based on what you found, right? So when the timeline gets extended, when you go back into negotiations, are you also like changing like the amount you're invoicing the client for? Are you invoicing them for more depending on how much extra work you're doing? Like, what usually do you do in that situation?
Yeah, so at least for me, I'll tell you the way that I operate now, I bill on a monthly basis, kind of what I call like a subscription. And
Mm,
so like I don't do a lot of the hourly project based kind of type thing anymore. So like my the way that I work now is not the way that I would recommend somebody who's not like already established or early on, like, pitching to clients like this is how I work kind of type thing or whatever. Most of my work early on was like hourly or project based. And so in those instances, what I would do essentially is, maybe we've taken um, an initial deposit or 50% or whatever kind of type thing. From there, you just like talk about like how do you want the rest of this build? Like, because again, like if you're going back to the drawing board of your deliverables, your scope of work has changed, then you're gonna want to also revisit, okay, because your scope of work includes, you know, the deliverables, timeline, and budget. You now need to like refigure out like, okay, well, like what does that look like then as far as like what's the end goal here? So how do you want me to invoice this last part? Kind of type thing. So yeah, like it is just like discussing that and talking about money is always uncomfortable or whatever. But if you're a freelancer and you're a business, like there's absolutely
right.
nothing, no way to get around that. You just got to get used to it.
Of course. Now, I want to actually ask you a follow up on something you just said. You said you were able to transition into more of a subscription based or like retainer kind of model, right?
Yeah.
How were you able to make that switch? Because that's like the holy grail for a lot of freelancers.
It is. It is. So man, I heard early on like Kurt Elster, like and he runs the unofficial Shopify podcast and just like really smart, awesome guy. And he talked about this once where I heard him mention on a podcast or something about I can't remember his podcast, but he had talked about how like he got paid like upfront for jobs. And I was like, what? Like at the time that was like mind blowing. I didn't think that was a possibility, right? Like
Right.
my whole framework was built around this idea of like, maybe 50% up front and then 50% at the end kind of type thing or what have you, or maybe payments weekly or whatever. Lots of different payment models, but like this idea of like, holy cow, like really that could happen. And so there are parts of that that I didn't like. Like I don't like the idea of like a long-term contract. From like an agency retainer model kind of type thing, like someone signing on for 6 months to a year or whatever. That never made sense to me. And so now all of my work is structured around figuring out what sort of support level is needed on a monthly basis. And that is a quote unquote subscription. So like when they need another month, they kind of move into that. Now, as far as like how I made that switch, some of the best advice that I got, you know, for doing that. I think I got that from Kelly Pond. So she used to run the taproom agency way back in the day. But she just talked about like, like when you're full up on work, and you're turning people away because you don't have time or whatever, and you're trying to refer a lot of work on, like that's like as you onboard new people, like that's when you start like increasing your rates or testing out new billing models. And so that's what I started doing. I was full up on work and I had work for the next like 2-3 months. And so every new person that came on, it was just like, well, this is how I do business. Like, and so I started pitching at the time just this like subscription or retainer kind of type model. Be like, this is the pricing, this is the month, this is what you get, yada yada yada. And eventually, I got enough people to say yes that I was again booked out for a couple of months. And then as my other uh, scope of work contracts expired for existing clients, I migrated them all to this. I'm like, hey, like this is what we're doing right now, as far as like how I'm billing now. So I hope this is okay with y'all. And nobody had a problem with it because it was, yeah, this works just fine for us. And so after that happened, like I said, now it's just the normal conversation. I don't do business that way. Now that's not to say there's a lot of clients that aren't okay with that. I've had multiple people who will say, well, this is how we pay our freelancers. or our contractors or what have you, or we're not really comfortable with payment terms. It's like, that's totally fine. Like there's a lot of freelancers who will bill that way. I'm just not one of them. And so you have to be comfortable hearing that from people, like, and so, but yeah, that's always my recommendation now for anytime you're changing pricing, you're trying to change the billing model, get full, right? That's the first step. That's step one. That's the hard part, right? Maybe.
Yep.
And then after that, like, yeah, that's the hard part. And then you start just like testing it out, like, and so, another guy, I'd say another really smart guy for people to listen to, Chase Clymer. He runs another Shopify podcast as well, but I on a call with him, he had talked about when you're talking about pricing with people, so this switch, if you've got like 30% of people saying yes right away, 30% of people saying we'll think about it, 30% of people saying no, that's your sweet spot. Like that means like you're kind of dialed in, like when it comes to like your pricing and positioning, stuff like that. So that was kind of how I mirrored those two things of get full, and test that out, kind of take it, and it worked.
Nice, nice. And you said that guy's name was Chase Clymer?
Yes, yeah. And he runs, oh man, like he's so mad at me. I'm Honest Commerce, I think, is his podcast. I can't remember now off the top of my head, but he runs an agency called Electric Eye, out of Columbus, actually.
Got you. Yeah, send me a link to it later so that I can. You mentioned Kelly Vaughn as well. I was her
Yeah,
biggest
yeah,
fan when she was posting on Twitter before. I don't know what
I
happened.
know. Kelly's awesome. Well, she's transitioned out of like the Shopify world to like now she's doing all sorts of other like really cool stuff, which is good for her. She's kind of like moved on from that space, but she seriously taught me like so much stuff. She's had such great content over the years, and but like just yeah, tremendous person. So
All right, another question for you. And I know this is a big one.
yeah,
This is hotly debated in my WhatsApp group, right?
Kelly,
So
yeah.
the question I have here is, as developers, how do we move from like being a technician and a person implementing a client's ideas versus the expert that's actually helping the client plan?
Yeah, yeah. So this is a tough one for me too, because I feel like in some instances I'm still the technician, and in other instances I've made that transition. And I've tried for a while to figure out how can I replicate that, or how can I be in that kind of a position consistently. And I think some of it is to a degree, so your positioning has to come from, uh, and what has worked really well for me, like I said, is more of like an education standpoint of making good insights, throughout the process. So a lot of instances when you're a freelancer, you're kind of in this position, right, where they're just like, here's the list of deliverables, like, go push the divs, right? And so that's what we're doing. Now, what I tend to do, or what I have found to be the most effective way to start moving into that position, is one, when you get the push the divs, kind of deliverable worksheet here, right? Start asking questions. So insightful, good questions. I used to think that questions were a bad thing and made it look like I was really dumb, didn't know what I was doing. Really good questions showcase your expertise in a specific area, because a lot of times you'll get people be like, "Oh, we actually haven't considered that," you know. And so it's full in good questions even from the get go. Now instead, what ends up happening during that transition is, as they're creating the list of deliverables, they actually ask you first, like, "Hey, this is what we're thinking. What sorts of things do we need to consider here?" And then eventually you're just part of like that whole initial planning phase of like, this is the problem that we have. What are the solutions that we can start meeting here? And so that's probably what I would say is, start with good questions as you get to that position of like you're getting those deliverables. Eventually people start to realize based on those questions that you have good insights. And over time, as your relationship with that individual client grows, you'll be in that position. Now, how to do that with new clients, right? That's the part that I think you can kind of create content and all this other stuff and make good insights. I've seen some people kind of offer like an out of the box like store audit, like because then it's more so you're trying to initially position yourself as the expert in the situation. I've seen a lot of agencies do that. I think that's a big reason why they do that, instead of just, hey, tell me what you want done, I'm going to get it done. More so kind of coming from a position of, hey, this is, we're going to start off the relationship this way. Like, I know these are the things that you want done, but I do know it's worthwhile to spend the time actually looking for pain points that we could improve here, so that way your business does better. So I think both of those are really good ways to do that. Another way to do that, sharing like resources and updates with clients that you know will help their business. Every now and again, I'll see something from Shopify and I will send it to a client. I'll just email them and I'll say, hey, like this new feature rolled out, we should really consider implementing this here in the next 6 months. Because I know it will fix this problem that we've been working on or this problem that we were looking ahead to. So, when you can start to anticipate, again, you position yourself as somebody who is looking out for their business and then they want your opinion. And then you're seen as the expert.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I especially like the one about asking more questions because you're like actively listening to them.
Yeah, yeah. I used to just be like kind of scared to ask questions. I'm like, 'cause I should know how to do this, right? Like you give me this, like for the longest time, and this always happens, especially if you're a theme dev and you're working on sections, and they give you the design from the designers, this beautiful Figma, right? And it's all desktop. And you as the developer know
Right. What about
80%
mobile?
of our traffic plus is mobile, man. Like where's the mobile design? Those designers, like they never want to do like the mobile. And so then you start looking at, well, how is this supposed to stack? Do we want to do a horizontal slider? Like do we need to have any kind of like interactive features here kind of type thing? I've seen this on this website. I really like the design for this. I think it could work really well here. So asking about stuff like that, that's how you start to incorporate that versus before when I'd get those and be like, okay,
Okay.
like there's no mobile. I'm just gonna take a shot at this and hope that like they're not mad. So but ask the good questions, man. That's how they know you're the expert.
Bro, I'm so guilty of this. I'm so
I
guilty.
know. We all are, dude. Everybody's done it. Everybody's done it. Like, you don't want to look like you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the last company I worked at, I had that problem a lot. I'd be in like the company KPI meetings, and they're talking about, oh, our metrics for this and AOV. I'm like, um,
Just
did what
like
we do
Googling
last week.
stuff over there.
I remember the first week I was there, I had to stop the meeting and ask what a PDP was. It's like, can someone tell me what a PDP is, please?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's well, it's yeah, it's so funny. I was even on a client call not too long ago, and I've worked with this brand for years, and they kept referring to some specific acronym that I knew referred to a product. I'm like, what product are we even talking about right now? I was like, what are y'all talking about? It's like, oh no, we're talking about this thing. It's like totally unrelated. It's okay, cool. Like I actually could check out for this part. But yeah, like you just gotta ask the questions. It'll always happen.
So you just recommend asking the question, no matter how dumb it might sound in your head.
Yeah, because that's the thing, right? Like, I think in order to position yourself as an expert, like you need to believe that you're the expert. I think a lot of times when we don't ask that question, it's because like you don't see yourself as the expert, right? Because you're sitting there thinking like I should know this. And here's the thing that I have found, or my definition of or perspective of an expert has changed from an expert is not someone who knows everything. It's they know what they don't know. So those are the things that I think are really important to define. So like, I don't know, I don't know how to do a massive database migration over from like this Magento X, Y, and Z that we're using for inventory fulfillment over into Shopify. But like, I know I don't know that. So I know we're going to probably need some kind of an integration specialist, right? Like, so, kind of stick to your lane, know what you don't know, and then you can start giving better feedback. From the get go.
Right. Or I guess at least be willing to say out loud, hey, I don't know how to do this. I can go figure it out, but I don't know how to do it. So we might want to bring somebody else on to at least show me what's going on or something.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of times that's the tough part. Just ask for documentation. Like sometimes you're taking over. A lot of times you're taking over a project from an agency or a dev. Ask if there's existing documentation. A lot of times I've found that there is. The client just doesn't ever look at it.
Uh,
So they're like,
You
I don't
got
know how
lucky.
this works. And there's like, well, there is like, okay, well, is there documentation? Well, yeah, actually, I think they gave us some or whatever, but like nobody's checking. It's like, hey, it's this Google Doc with like everything's lined out. You're like, what the heck, man? Like, why? Like, what do y'all need here? So yeah, ask the questions.
Right. That's a good point. And obviously, hopefully, you get documentation. In all the projects I've worked on,
Mm.
I've never been lucky enough to get documentation.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that is so very common. And honestly, I go back and forth because I do find that a lot. I go what I feel like is the extra mile. And I encourage freelancers, contractors, like, devs or whatever, to do the same as far as like providing some good docs or some good references for clients. I do like record videos and all this other stuff, but like honestly, like I don't know if they look at it a lot of times, and then you're like, I don't know if I'm wasting my time here, but it is often a selling point, of like, oh, like I'm gonna have documentation, great. Not that I'm gonna look at it, but that we have it is great. Analytics is the same way with a lot of people. They're not gonna look at it; they just want to have it, and so
Right.
it's one of those things.
Got you. That makes total sense. Now,
One,
the last topic I wanted to talk about here, and this is something that I know a lot of theme developers are thinking about because every
mhm,
day somebody comes out with a tool. You can build a Shopify theme in 3 clicks, or like
just
use this AI
one,
tool to just build out your entire store from a paragraph, pictures included, and
one.
all the products and everything. So a lot of theme developers are looking at that, and then also looking at like platforms like Upwork. I'll build a whole Shopify brand for you that's profitable for $5.
One.
And it's like,
Okay,
so how do I pay my bills as a theme developer if everybody can do my job either for free or at a really cheap price? What would you say to that
yeah.
person?
So what I would say is like this is not a new problem. As far as there's a lot of things that have like reduced the costs of development and a lot of aspects and those sorts of things, but Upwork, Fiverr, on all these other things where you feel like you're having to compete with these people who are positioning themselves in a way that like I'm going to build this whole thing for $5, $10 or whatever kind of pay thing or whatever,
Mhm.
and then you're sitting here looking at your hourly and you're like, oh, man, like I just increased to like $75 an hour, and like nobody's going to pay this or whatever, right? And so you know, like I said, this was the same issue really before AI became big too. Like there've always been these like really cheap like solutions that you can use in order to get a shop. Okay. And so what I would recommend considering is that, or here's what I tell people. I tell people I don't compete on price. Like when I'm talking to a client, when I'm trying to, whether it's a discovery call or you want to call it a sales call, kind of is because you're kind of like putting yourself in position of like, you got this problem, I've got the solution, this is how much it's going to cost. I tell everybody like what I charge, like just like, the very first meeting, because I'm not interested in competing on price. Like I will compete on quality. And it's the same thing when we're in this position where even clients can kind of build out this AI, kind of type website or whatever kind of type thing. You know, that's not going to be anything of quality. Yeah, like it's getting better. Like it's made leaps and bounds in a very small amount of time. But because of that, I mean, you should also be using AI. In order to like develop and build out for clients, and you should be moving faster or getting deeper into that backlog of tasks. So get good at those things, but don't go chasing after those really low cost jobs because the clients that you want to work with, they are not they are not even taking the time to try to prompt AI to build out their website.
Right. They
So
got other.
clients that, yeah, they value their time and where they are most effective in building up business processes. They use, relationships with vendors and all this other stuff, figuring out how to cut down their shipping costs and those sorts of things. And so the other thing is like as you get more complicated, so AI is great in some instances, building out these sections and different things and what have you, but it is just a tool, and the problem with some of these tools is it's only going to let you go so far. And so now, okay, well, we've built out these custom sections, but we need to make some edits. Okay, good luck with getting AI to do exactly what you want it to do if you just want to incorporate something really small. And you're going to get a rough picture of it. At least even I'm using AI daily, and a lot of instances it gets me 80 to 90% of the way there, but I am always having to be responsible for that last 10 to 20. Now, do I think that we'll progress to the point where it's completely 100%? I'm not sure. I think that there's a lot of like low hanging fruit for real simple things, where maybe like a store build on something that would have been a simple site before someone can do with AI. But as soon as they start making money and as soon as they need to start looking at integrations, as soon as they need to start looking at real specific branding, they're going to have to bring in someone who knows what they're doing.
Mhm.
I took over one shop where it was built by an agency. And then after the agency, in the transition period, the merchant went ahead This is a plush shop, and the merchant like was using either Cursor or Claude Code. I think it was Cursor, and the stuff that was in there was just absolutely wild. Like I was like, what is happening here? Like, and so after asking the merchant, like, hey, like, like what happened with this? Is like, oh yeah, like I built this out, and it was just so AI's understanding of it. I mean, it just dumped everything in the theme got liquid. Like it was just absolutely wild.
Wait,
And
wait, the
so
that liquid you said? Oh my
yeah, it
god.
was all these little functionality like it's like this is just for the cart page, but we're like dumping it into Liquid and like all this other stuff and like it was just
Wait,
wild. I was like looking at
how
this. He
long
was
was the
trying to
file?
do it was like thousands of lines here. And it was like it was just wild. And so it was just funny because it's trying to like do a block loop or whatever, and like there are no blocks like for this, like for whatever. Like I don't know what's happening. So really wild stuff. So as far as, what it's going to do or what have you. AI is going to help maybe drive development costs down for some of that like low hanging fruit. There's a really good terminology that so Mohammed from Gadget, he's the guy over that does the Shopify app builder and stuff, and they do more app builders now, JavaScript and all this other stuff. But he talks about this term like citizen developer, and so it's a lot of this terminology around like AI tools are going to get good enough to like build some of those small projects for people. But I think there's always going to be this position where like some form of services are going to be needed. I think a lot of these like really small apps are going to go away because, you know, or even some of those like really small theme projects that none of us really like doing anyways. It's just kind of busy work. Some of that stuff's going to go away because the client, merchant, whatever is going to use AI to do that. Uh, and so because they're going to have like some really easy to access, low cost tooling like, AI to build some of this stuff out for them. But I think that services to some degree, freelancers, service providers are going to still be needed because they're going to need to get them the last 10 to 20%, or their expertise is going to be needed because the client can't be an expert at everything, just like you can't be an expert at everything. And so I think it's one of those things, it's not a new problem, right? Like development costs, other people like really competing for that low hanging fruit. A lot of people will just pay because like they want a very trustworthy source. Bigger clients don't even care about like if someone say, I'm going to build this for like, $30, like they're immediately suspicious. They're like, something's wrong here, right? Like, this shouldn't cost them like this little amount. So, so yeah, like I know I'm rambling here a little bit kind of thing, but that's what I would probably say in general. People working on Shopify themes, I think you can't sleep on it as far as like not knowing it's there. So only from the standpoint of like you should be using AI. It's a tool for you to use. It will make you more effective, it will make you faster, you'll be able to get into that backlog deeper. So and that's always been my position. Like don't try to compete on price, try to compete on quality. And so what you can do is ship code better and faster. Um, don't don't think that you have to compete with someone charging, $5 an hour.
Okay. So we just talked about how you can like continue to, I guess, survive in the existing economy we have with all these toolings and all the people offering really low cost services, right? But for the people that want to charge even more money as Shopify theme developers or Shopify developers in general, what should they be doing?
So what I would be doing is expanding probably the services that you provide to some degree. So for instance, I'm in this position now where I'm doing some custom app dev too. So I started off just working in themes, not really doing any app dev at all. And so now I'm moving into that as well. And I think you have to, like, especially the way that everything in Shopify, at least the Shopify landscape is moving to a lot of extensibility in some areas. So you've got checkout, we've got the customer accounts, like we're talking about like just apps. We can't just, throw some liquid in there and like do whatever we want anymore kind of big thing. And so I think if you are a theme dev, I think you do need to start moving into at least working on to some degree, expanding into the app space specifically as well. It's going to make you a better dev anyways and more rounded in that regard too. And again, use AI as the tool for that. So I think that that's probably one of the best ways as far as, moving into like a better positioning for yourself rather than just staying put where you are, because I think a lot of that that low hanging fruit and you know I don't know, like make a setting here for this color or for a color setting for this button now, or whatever kind of thing. A lot of those things are probably not going to be as common. It'll probably just be like a side quest and see the other stuff you're doing.
Right. And it's just focusing on just providing more value depending on what the merchant has going on as a pain point.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
That makes a lot of sense. And it aligns with what I think as well. That's actually the reason why I got into app development myself, because I kind of saw
Yeah,
the writing on the wall. I'm like, I got to go in this direction. Right.
yeah,
Do you
smart.
do you think Shopify developers should niche down to solving a specific type of problem or a specific type of merchant, or just be open to learning new things in general?
Yeah, I mean, so this is tough because I think you could. I've seen agencies even be successful picking a lane like, oh, we're a subscription agency, right? Like we just help out people with like building out, launching like subscriptions for products and stuff or whatever, like setting those up. Oh, we're like a bundling agency. We build these like really beautiful bundlers and whatever kind of type thing, this, that, and the other. So I think you could do that, but I do think, or at least it's always benefited me to be open to exploring different parts of development or different like problems or strategies. That's always worked out really well for me as well. And I would just kind of go where kind of like your interests take you, but also where you find you're able to just provide the most value. Like when I started off in web development, because I used to be a social worker before I did this, and then started like doing web dev projects. It was like just this big, broad, like, you need a website. Like I'm building websites, and eventually, I started working Shopify because I found I could provide the most value there. And so in a way that was niche down, right? Like we're really niche down then from just like this big general web development to just Shopify now. And so if you could theoretically niche down, like I said, even more, you definitely could. But as far as what I think I have found has benefited me is just being open to exploring other areas too.
Okay, nice. Now, I lied, actually. I do have exactly one more question for you. And this is more of a personal
Exactly one more.
exactly one more. So imagine you were talking to younger Taylor, right?
Yeah.
Taylor, like you just stopped your previous career, now you're moving towards development, but you're in this current ecosystem with all these things happening. What would you tell younger Taylor to do to navigate everything that's going on?
And
Like professionally and
well,
personally, I guess.
yeah. Probably, at least personally and professionally, I just let them know it's going to be fine. When I transitioned from social worker to like web developer, full time freelance, like just focusing on Shopify, where it was like a pretty like tumultuous time. Obviously, just transitioning with a very stable career to freelance, like felt very very unstable. But so that probably be the first thing. It's like everything's gonna be fine. Like it's gonna be okay. Um, but yeah, I mean, as far as I don't know, like as far as like other things that I want to like tell myself at that time, I think it would really just be really encouraging me to not be afraid to continue seeking out like good relationships. There's like this weird kind of like idea, I think, when you're coming from outside of the business realm into like, you're running your own business. As a freelancer, you're running your own business. And that's a big part of being a successful freelancer, contractor, whatever, right? Like you're running your own business. So you need those business skills. But such a big part of that has been just connecting with people in the community. And I think like we always think like networking is like kind of like dirty self-serving word, but that's what it is in a lot of instances. You're connecting with other people who are in this space, and I've just been super fortunate to do that. And I go back and forth different times where I've been like, I'm spending too much time in this area, or I'm too much time in this area, or whatever. And the thing that's always been a good thing has been in just taking out awesome people in this Shopify dev community specifically. It's been really phenomenal. I've had a lot of like really good opportunities that have blossomed out of that, and jobs, connections, or just really just meaningful time that I've been able to spend with other people. And so I've grown both personally and professionally just by being around certain people in this space. And so I think it's hard because that doesn't equate a lot of times, right? It's not like a dollars and cents thing that you can measure really well. And I think that's part of that, like saying it's okay and then still focus on this stuff. I think that's kind of where we doubt ourselves a lot of how we're spending our time effectively or whatever that I do at least. So I think those would be some of the big things that I would tell myself as far as that goes. That buy Bitcoin or something. That would be those would be the things. Right?
Also, buy Bitcoin. Listen, I wish I could have told myself to buy a house at 8 years old, to be honest.
Right? That's yeah, like that. Oh man, like we did so well moving out of our house when we moved from Missouri to Ohio because it was right in that time. But then you move to Ohio, then you pay because someone else is selling their house during this housing craze too. So we made a lot of money off our house, and someone made a lot of money off the house we bought. So it what it
Yeah.
was.
Shouldn't have been playing video games. Should have been looking at the real estate market. That's my bad.
Yeah, yeah, had no idea.
Okay, no, that's amazing. And honestly, I actually recommend the same thing to a lot of people. I always tell them,
Yeah,
go to events. Even if you don't feel like you know anything, just go to events. See who you meet. You never know.
100%. Yeah, those are really helpful. I miss having a local web developer event like I had in Missouri here. I need to figure out how I can spin one up here or something because it's really really good. Carl's like an hour and a half away from me, so I gotta drive too far or whatever. Maybe I can get him to come up here every now and again. So
Yeah, I would love to do something similar in New York, but it's so much work. It's so much work.
yeah, it is a lot of work. It is.
Like, Henry Johnson?
Yeah,
Of
dude
course,
is
yeah, of course.
awesome.
He's in the thing. I forgot. But he drives. No, he takes a plane up to New York to do his New York City e-commerce event, and it's just so much
Yep,
stuff involved.
it
I would
is.
love to create like a developer specific version of that, but
Mhm.
I need to clone myself first before I can do that.
Yeah, that's the tough part, man. It really does take a village. Just doing like a small in-person event we did at additions.dev, just to get like a small space that we could all hang out and eat and do whatever for a little bit. Like that was so much work. So yeah, in-person events like they take a lot of effort. So kudos to people like Henry that are just like really good at that stuff.
He's a saint. He's a saint.
Mhm.
Okay, is there anything else you want anyone watching to know about you? Like where to find you? I'm gonna link all the Liquid Weekly stuff to
Yeah.
the description of it.
No, I mean that's pretty much it. I'm pretty much everywhere online. That's the strategy is, you're try to be everywhere and try to provide value in whatever space that I'm in and hope that that works out. It's worked out pretty well for me so far. So yeah, Twitter and LinkedIn are probably where I spend the most time. Um, and then other than that, I'm in Shop Dev Alliance all the time, obviously too, and in the Slack. So
Yes,
that's
actually,
pretty much it.
you want to talk about Shop Dev Alliance a little bit for 'cause people watching might not be familiar with it.
Yeah, so Shop Dev Alliance is, kind of more so also born out of that like, community and relationships sort of thing. Just it's a premium Slack, so it's a paid Slack. And just we have a bunch of experienced Shopify developers in there. So there's app devs, theme devs, um, freelancers. We do have like some agency owners and stuff in there as well. And like the big thing is more so I was actually really leery first of like letting like agency people in too because I've been a part of several of these Slacks. And nothing against agency people. There's really good agency people out there, but I really wanted to focus on individuals. And it started off as a freelancer only community. And then we kind of opened it up to like, okay, like, well, if you're an experienced Shopify dev, and so like you basically have to get a referral or to apply to get in and stuff like this or whatever. You don't just like let anybody in. But that's the idea. It's just a community of people that are Shopify developers. So we're all kind of dealing the same stuff, supporting Shopify merchants and helping each other out. So it takes it a little bit further than just like, the technical, and it is a community. So hope to continue to see that grow. It's awesome to see people at additions.dev. And so that was the idea was to create that kind of a space, and very cool to actually meet people in person as well. So yeah,
All right, listen, thank you for spending so much time with me. I really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely, dude. Anytime.
All right.